Okay, so Dame Alison Peacock is here. I know. I stalk her.
She does.
I do. We just go to the same parties.
Yep.
But you were there first. We're really blessed to have a friend in the Chartered College of Teaching. The Chartered College of Teaching is an awesome body that represents teachers and makes us feel our own authority, makes us feel trusted, makes us feel capable. And that's one of the reasons why many of us left working in a school or didn't even go into working in a school, because the accountability agenda is really, really painful to live under. The Chartered College are waving a flag for professional development in teaching, also tutoring. And that opportunity to come together as professionals is immensely valuable. So we're very happy to be associated and partnered with the Chartered College. And Dame Alison, the first time I emailed you during COVID, you replied to me in less than 12 hours. I said, I'm supporting tutors. You said, I want to help. And we've been talking about that ever since, because teaching goes beyond teachers, and the pedagogical skills that you speak about in terms of helping real people to do their best work is something that's always made a difference. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you enjoy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to colleagues online who are joining us as well. I represent, as you've heard, the Chartered College of Teaching. Well, who are we? We're a professional body. We're in our 7th year. We're completely independent of government. We're completely self-sustaining. We're a charitable not-for-profit. Our aim is to empower a respected, knowledgeable profession through membership and accreditation. Our membership encompasses teachers, teaching assistants, tutors, governors, anybody who works in education and cares about children. We care about you. So you are warmly welcome. And in fact, we also work with independent schools as well as state schools, so we don't require teachers to have QTS. What we are really keen to do, though, is to build the opportunity for teachers to develop their careers, to develop their professional knowledge, as you've heard from Julia. So I'm going to talk to you this morning about the importance of positivity and professionalism. There is a kind of lack of positivity right now. I know it's particularly as we come towards the end of the summer term. You'd think there might be more positivity with the sight of summer holidays, kind of almost, you can always smell the summer holidays kind of on the horizon. But the reality is, I think our profession is really suffering in all kinds of ways from all kinds of directions. I've just literally been downstairs on the phone to a journalist who was talking about, what else can schools do to narrow the gap for our young people, alongside everything else that's already been tried? And I said, well, actually, we need to recognize the impact of the pandemic. We need to understand that what has happened in a child's life, if you've got 2 years out of your life when you're not allowed to leave your home, when you're not allowed to go and play with your friends, when you're not allowed to be socializing with your peers if you're a teenager, that is very damaging. And the idea that we can just click our fingers and make it all right again is naive at best. The work that you do as tutors, of course, can be hugely helpful in this space. And I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you. So the notion that education transforms lives is at the heart of what I believe. I genuinely believe that individual teachers can make a massive, massive difference. Individual tutors can make a massive, massive difference to a child's life. What we know from the evidence is that you actually only need one adult, one trusted adult who believes in you, who inspires you to make you feel like it's going to be okay. You can be that adult. You need to be that adult for the children that you work with. I've been involved in research, and these are the books from Learning Without Limits. Learning Without Limits is a study of, we started off with a study of 9 different schools, primary and secondary, and all of these schools were schools where there were teachers. I was one of those teachers who were trying really hard to teach without labeling children. Now, when we were doing this study, this was quite radical work. Back in 2004, it was a really radical thing to be doing, to say, we're not going to be labelling children, because back in the day, and still now in many, many schools, children are divided up into groups. They are divided according to their so-called attainment in so-called academic subjects, regardless of your talents elsewhere in the curriculum. Children who are put into a group of hedgehogs know that a hedgehog is not going anywhere compared with the gazelles. So if you've got a class and you label the children, hedgehogs right the way through to gazelles, the hedgehogs know full well that the expectations on them are very low. I suspect, but not entirely, there may be some of you who are working with children who have neurodiverse needs, who may very well, in a normal classroom, be in one of those groups where they've been written off. Or maybe they're not in school anymore because it's too difficult, it's too challenging. This slide here, Transforming Learning Capacity, it's a detailed slide. I'm not really expecting you to engage with it, other than to see that there's a notion that as teachers, as individuals working with our students, we can lift limits. There are so many limits that are placed on individual students throughout their period of time in school, right the way through from when they first start school, all the way through the system. And those external limits are limits that is very hard for the individual to resist. Added to that, there are internal limits that you place on yourself. And we'll all recognize that kind of notion of imposter syndrome, or, if someone says to us, you're no good at that, or don't try that again, or is that the best you can do? Chances are you're not going to try very hard the next time because you need to self-protect. And then we do this whole thing in classrooms about saying, it's safe to make mistakes around here. Safe for who to make mistakes? Not me, the teacher, because I need to be sorted out, but it's all right for you to make mistakes. It's very hard to be able to be in an environment where you genuinely are valued for who you are. So I think the opportunity that you have is unique in being able to really establish the relationship, the bond, that trust that is needed, that reciprocal trust between you and the learner, you and the group of learners, that makes all the difference. At the Chartered College, we are absolutely committed to working with all teachers. And during Learning Without Limits, one of the things that I would talk about is about how do we find a way through for every child. So not what's wrong with the child, but how do we find a way through to help the child? That's a really powerful shift in mindset. So not what's wrong with the child, what's the label of the child, what's the education, healthcare support plan, or whatever it might be, what's the provision for the child? No, not that. What can I, as a professional, or together with my other co-professionals, what can we do to find a way through to enable this child to learn? To find a way through to motivate this child, to inspire this child, to believe in this child, to support this child, so that they're ready to learn. There's no shortcut for that. But when you get there and you get that kind of relationship, then anything feels possible. So when we had our inaugural conference, we wanted to include some teachers who were neurodiverse themselves and had additional needs. And we chose to invite a teacher who had a stammer. So I'm just going to show you a bit of this film.
My name is because I can't say my first name, my name is Mr. Ahmed. Don't worry about what people think about your stammer, because the second that you start to think about people, your stammer might tend to become a bit more worse. This is our support group. The main reason why I made this support group is so that those people don't have to go through the same things that I went through. There were so many times where I just refused to put my hands up or take part in my lessons because I was just scared of what people would say about my stammer. In fact, there was a lot of people that did bully me. Can we make a circle?
These teachers are supporting me, and they improve my speaking.
Don't forget, if you're feeling nervous, you can put your hands at the back, you can put your hands at the front, as long as we speak very loudly.
We think Mr. Ahmed is a great teacher.
The good thing about this group is that it's just someone laughs, that we can laugh back at them because they have a stance that we do.
It's true. So they see me struggling, I see them struggling, and it's fine.
We had that teacher at a panel for a national conference. The messages, I think, are really powerful. All teachers, all colleagues working with our children and young people deserve to be valued, but also they can model that actually different ranges of capacity to learn are not limits on what is possible to achieve. So if you have a neurodiverse profile yourself, if you have special needs yourself, if you are able to contribute and support children, that's the most important thing. This notion of resilience, I was at a mental health seminar yesterday evening that actually Julia wasn't at, so that was me managing to... Did I miss an invitation? Well, anyway. And at that event of CAM's specialists, mental health specialists, they were saying now the figure is 1 in 4 young people who self-identify as having a mental health need. 1 in 4. And that is, it's utterly shocking. The idea that we can expect our young people to develop resilience if we've got teachers who themselves are not resilient is it's a nonsense. So we need to think about the conditions that affect resilience. And I came across this diagram. The culture where we work makes a massive difference. And if we can be centered and calm and poised and our best selves when we're working with our students, they will be able to get from us those vibes of it's okay. It's okay here, it's calm, it's fine. I'm in a safe place where I can focus on my learning. And I think that's something that is really fundamental for your role. Post-pandemic, well, we're not, okay, we might be post the sort of trauma of immediacy around COVID, but the impact, as I was saying earlier, of the pandemic on our young people is huge. We can't just run away and just kind of say, oh, well, that's all right, then we'll just sort it all out. We need to really think about what has made the difference. So 2 years of being shut away, not seeing your friends and so on, but also the lack of regulation that you needed to have, the lack of being in a big group, the lack of being in different environments, with different kind of teachers. There were many children who thrived, actually, during the pandemic because they were taken away from all of that. They were taken away from the hurly-burly of the corridor. They were taken away from the kind of, you've now all got to sit here for an hour and think about this. They could think about things and do their work when it was best for them to do it. So there were many children who really thrived in that time. And many of those children have not returned to school. So they may well be children that you're working with. They may be children who find it really hard to just get back in and get on. And we need to respect those children and individuals for the people that they are. And we think about wider society. We've got so much more flexible working than we ever had prior to the pandemic. Why? Our young people, are just younger versions of ourselves. So why wouldn't they want to do that as well? I do think, however, the accountability agenda is beginning to shift, but only because of the awful events surrounding the death of a primary head teacher. Finally, I think there's going to be a move, and I'm certainly part of that. I'm part of a commission that's looking at how do we soften the accountability agenda, but how do we broaden what it is that we teach within schools and our definition of what learning is within school. And, collaboration and collective kindness is key. It's easy to say, but the reality is, if you can show kindness to your students, you might be the only person who does, in an environment where teachers are really hard-pressed, and feel under the cosh. I just love this quote. This was from a child. So I was on Twitter, and it was post the first main lockdown, and a parent posted on Twitter. She said, my 7-year-old has just come home and said to me, Mum, the trouble with school is it's just not bendy enough. And you kind of completely understand what the child means, don't you? I'm sure many of those children that you work with are children who cannot stand the fact that everybody has to do the same thing at the same time because it doesn't feel natural. Chartered college, professional body, aren't we great? La, la, la. Here's our charter. We've got a royal charter. We want to become the Royal College of Teaching. And I think the profession deserves that. It's the sort of thing that could be granted to us without any political cost. But wouldn't it be great when we have Royal Colleges for Medicine and so on? Shouldn't we have a Royal College of Teaching? I think so. Shouldn't I be the leader of the Royal College of Teaching? I think so. So that's what we're working towards. Now, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about professionalism, because I think the jobs that you do, the work that you do, means that you are absolutely part of the teaching profession. And what does it mean to be a professional? Well, I was giving a talk at a prestigious university at the beginning of the year, and the session before mine was run by one of the tutors, and she was saying this was to trainee teachers who were about to go into school for the first time, and she was saying, well, you know, to be a professional, you need to make sure that you turn up on time and you dress smartly. I was like, well, surely there's a bit more to it than that. So I came away and sort of looked at, well, how can we define this? I think this first bullet point here, a restless pursuit to build pedagogical knowledge, skill, and compassion. I think that is at the heart of what it means to be a great professional. That whichever session you run, you kind of come away from it and think, that was great, but it could have been even better. Or maybe that didn't go too well. Where else can I look? What else can I do? How can I refine the work that I'm doing? How can I build the relationship further so that I'm really kind of getting that sense that I'm doing the best I can? There is something really important about being a professional that is about the pride in the achievement of others. So this is about when you're a teacher in a classroom and a child comes rushing up to you and they say, guess what? And you say, what? And they say, I scored a goal at football last night. Or guess what? I finished my book. Or guess what? You know, I got a great grade in my work. Or whatever it is, there's a sort of sense of an energy around doing well that is their achievement, but you kind of have a bit of reflected glory. And you will feel that as well. So when your tutees do something that they didn't think they would be able to do in life, and they tell you about it, it feels really great. There's something about how we make sure that we draw our courage to do the right job in the right way from ethical values, that we offer a role model, that we do look after ourselves. I mean, nobody wants to be tutored by a wreck, let's face it. And that we think about pursuit of learning as a collective endeavour. And the very fact that you're part of this conference means that you understand that your role as an individual is important, but your role collectively can make it even stronger, even better. These Nolan Principles are the principles that people in public life sign up to. This is what our politicians sign up to. Have a look. I know. It's bizarre, isn't it? They know they've signed up to. They know they've signed up to them, but somehow it just seems to have avoided quite. So, in all honesty, the role models that our children see, you know, if the role models that our children see in public life, if they don't come up to their mark in terms of those principles, the people that they work with in their schools, they highly regard, they see you as really, really important. You are really important in your students' lives. You need to make sure, no pressure, that you present a role model to them that is somebody that they can look to, so that they're not influenced by the likes of Andrew Tate, and they're not influenced by the likes of some of our politicians. Not that our politicians and Andrew Tate all ought to be in the same breath, but never mind. And then on the right-hand side, we have these ethical leadership virtues, which is the virtues that the Chartered College is promoting, which were developed by professional associations, the unions, and so on, to really embody what it means to be a leader. And hopefully, you see those virtues as you're working within teaching. But if you don't, you need to embody them. We need to make sure our decisions are evidence-informed, because otherwise we're just making it up. So the more that we can engage with evidence, with things that are shown to work, the better, the more we can avoid edu-myths. And that's why we publish a journal 3 times a year. That journal is available to every one of you should you wish to join the Chartered College. And it's written by teachers and by academics. It's designed to be accessible, not dumbed down, but accessible for everybody. And this idea about moving beyond intuition, so we need to make sure that what works, if we're not careful, there's been research that's been done that shows that after 3 years, Teachers who have got things that work in their classrooms carry on doing that for the next 25 years unless they're disrupted. So if you've got a way of calming the class down, you've got a way of introducing your lesson, you've got a way of delivering certain tasks, that will continue to be the way that you do it unless that's disrupted and improved. So we need to move beyond that to really building a research-informed repertoire, I think. So I've got another little video to show you.
Okay. They need to work on that, right? Yes, okay. Did you understand it though? No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no, not this one. This is the grand finale of this. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah. Right, don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't bring it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. And then it was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? But don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Come on. That's crazy. Right.
Now that, I mean, apart from that being a charming little interlude, so you can get re-engaged in the content of the talk, there was a very powerful, very famous study that was published a couple of decades ago by Hart and Risley that talked about the fact that children from some of our less well-off communities suffered a vocabulary deficit. There was this sort of talk about the 30 million word gap, and this was all over education, and there were lectures about it, you know, what can we do? But underneath that was a very deterministic view that said it's already too late, effectively. You know, when children arrive in school, there's already a huge gap between what children can talk about and what some other children can talk about. That research was subsequently superseded. That research has been found to be flawed. It was carried out with a very small sample of children and families. What superseded it is research now that talks about the benefits of dialogue, just as we saw there. Turn-taking, back and forth, responding to each other, building dialogue is a much greater way, a much easier way of building vocabulary, building language acquisition. It's about valuing individuals. It's about listening, it's about responding, it's about critical inquiry, it's about developing argument, developing all the things that we do when we speak to each other. And I think that's the reason, just that one example there says to me, that's the reason why it's so important to be on top of what's being talked about in terms of research. Because if you hear one kind of buzzy kind of thing that's everywhere, and you then don't notice that actually that's been superseded, you hold on to the buzzy thing. Why wouldn't you? So we need to make sure that learning is career-long. At the Chartered College, we're really keen for people to become chartered teachers. If you have a degree and you are interested in studying to be a chartered teacher, then we can talk about how we might facilitate that. We also run a series of webinars on our website which are designed to be tackling the really knotty problems that our society has. So we have a kind of government-led agenda at the moment for education, which is all about knowledge. It's focusing on the academic. It kind of ignores the needs of a third of our society in schools in terms of those children who are already on a flight path at the end of Key Stage 2 that says you are not going to get your GCSEs. What are those children supposed to do between the ages of 11 and GCSE, which they've already told pretty much you're going to fail? There was a report by ASCL called The Forgotten Third, really powerful report. So we're trying really hard to work with the education community to rethink assessment, to rethink curriculum design, but we also want to work with leaders to help them lead inclusive schools. So units like this, which are available on our website, have videos, case study materials, really accessible, but they're meant to be thought-provoking stimuli for really engaging with key issues around inclusion. We also have materials about decolonisation of the curriculum. If you're working with a young person from the global majority, make sure that your curriculum materials, the things that you're doing, recognise who they are. Don't just expect them to just be kind of a homogenous version of the child that you're working with. And this particular study that is part of the decolonisation materials really struck me when I looked at it. It's a short video, but it talks about the fact that psychologists back in the 1940s, black psychologists working with groups of children, presented them with different dolls, and they said, which doll would you like to be with? And which doll would you like to be? Which doll would you identify with? And so on. And the children black children were identifying with white dolls as these are the dolls I want to be like. And then we had the study has been replicated many, many times, most recently in sort of 2020 in Scandinavia, and the results were almost identical. So when people say there's not an issue, there is. When people want to sweep under the carpet this issue of diversity or lack of diversity, it's a really important issue. So at the Chartered College, I'm proud to say that the Daily Mail called us woke, so that for publishing these materials. But I think it's really helpful to engage with the wider debate. Let's just have a look at some tongue-in-cheek research.
I'm going to give you this chocolate chip, and you can eat it anytime you want. But if you don't eat it and you wait for 5 minutes, then you can have what's inside of this box. Okay? So we're going to go upstairs, and we're going to wait for 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back down. So you just stay there.
Why get a blue bow? I like pink bows. I think it's because this one is more fragile. And you get that one because it's really pretty inside. I think this is going to be boring. Why? Because we just have to wait here doing nothing. This is gonna be boring. Do you think we could open the present right now? I think so. Don't you? What do we do?
So that idea, I mean, that's based on the marshmallow test, obviously. It's based on the idea of self-regulation, deferred gratification. I used to think, when I was teaching early years, that children either could do this or they couldn't, you know? But actually, the research of Professor Sarah Jane Blakemore, she's doing a lot of work around brain science, she has found that the skills of building self-regulation continue until the age of 25. which means that it's everybody's job to support children in building that capacity to self-regulate, which means that even in an individual one-to-one or a small group situation, providing children with choices is one of the key things that you can be doing to help them make good choices, to regulate their behaviours. So there are all kinds of things that all of us can be doing across schools. So again, it removes this notion of a deterministic, you either can or you can't, you've got something wrong with you, no, you haven't. This is about a continuum. You know, if you can't do something, it's about I can't do it yet, not I can't do it. And that's a really powerful model. We've been working with CAMHS workers. Now, you will know, I'm sure, that getting support from additional mental health specialists across the system is increasingly difficult. So if you're in a mainstream school and you have a child with profound needs, they almost have to be at the point of suicide before a CAMHS worker will, you know, the threshold is incredibly high until you can get that support. So we decided to approach the Association of CAM workers and said to them, can we provide some joint webinars? So these are webinars where we've got specialists in these particular areas of eating disorders, sleep deprivation, whatever it might be, self-harm, drug abuse, talking about what does the evidence tell us, what do we need to know, and then followed by another webinar which is about what's the pedagogy, what can teachers who are already working in these particular issues, what are they learning about in schools, what are they trying out, what can make the difference. Now, if you are working with a young person who is clearly suffering in terms of their mental health, this is another resource for you to just help you build your understanding so that you can try and do what you can to help alongside hopefully many others. And of course, if it's a safeguarding concern, you would be passing that on. But nevertheless, building your knowledge and understanding of what young people might be going through is really important. The issues our youngsters are faced with now are very different from the issues that you all had as children. Certainly very different from the issues that I faced as a child. I mean, I was sitting opposite someone on the tube just yesterday, and she got a little strappy top on, so her arms were bare, and they were just absolutely crisscrossed all the way up with where she'd been cutting herself. The survey data that was published last night showed us that children as young as 8 are self-harming, or they're seeing images coming in onto their phones about self-harming. So this is not something that we can just push to one side and say, well, it's nothing to do with us, I'm just trying to improve their reading, because the children we're working with are in a modern society that is very, very challenging. So at the Chartered College, we're just trying to do all that we can to help with that. Just to say, you know, these are the modules to become chartered, if that's something you're interested in, and we're offering different pathways for leaders and mentors and so on. And this is the slide that shows how this fits with the DFE. The DFE are running national professional qualifications that are free for teachers. We're providing something over and above that is more rigorous, that is more difficult, frankly, but that also hopefully is more pertinent because it relates to the individual teacher, the individual situation they're in, the class they're in, the children they're working with. And what does the evidence say, and what do they say about what they can do to inform and develop their practice? And accreditation of any form is helpful. I know you're involved in an accreditation process here with tutors. It really does mean that you can proudly say, you know, this is what I'm doing and this has been accredited, and so therefore it's worthy of note. Thank you very much. We're also keen to encourage people to become fellows of the Chartered College. So if you are someone who has taught for more than 10 years and you feel you would like to become a fellow, that might be something that's interesting for you. Now, I'm going to show you another film now. I can't show this film pretty much without crying, so excuse me. But let's have a look at the power of good teacher.
When you were younger, was there someone who kind of supported you or inspired you or sort of, you know, protected you from all the trials and tribulations of life and inspired you to sort of go on?
Yeah, I had a teacher at Chestnut Grove who taught me English. That was Miss McDonald.
Did you ever keep in touch? Did you see?
No, she left when I was in year 8. She left when I was in year 8, yeah. But it was just 1 year, but she was like, she got me really into literature. Like, I've always been obsessed with English, and obviously now I write lyrics. But she also did street dance. Not I was too scared to join. But like in the canteen, they used to do these dances and stuff like that. But yeah, she just, she was so bloody cool, so engaging. And like, she really made us care, and we knew that she cared about us and stuff like that. And it was just, she used to have all these gold bracelets on and gold, like, sig rings. I don't know, she was bloody cool.
Yeah.
And so relatable and likeable that I really look forward to my English lessons.
Yeah, because it's odd, actually, funny enough.
Is this McDonald here?
She's here tonight.
I'm so proud of you. I didn't know that you were coming. That's okay, it's supposed to be a surprise. Hi, how are you? Oh, you look exactly the same. You look exactly the same. What, are you still teaching?
No.
What do you do? No, just dancing?
No, I'm just looking after my family.
Oh my
just
God.
dancing.
Oh, sorry.
Don't cry. Thank you.
That's the power of a great teacher. You know, this is just to tell you, if you're not a member of the Chartered College, it's not, I hope, beyond your means to join us. I really hope that you do.
And if you're a QT member, you get a discount on that.
And if you're a QT member, you get a discount. Thank you, Julia. That's brilliant.
Is this what we do?
I know, this is what we do. This is what we do, absolutely. So just to finish, really, this is a picture of Maya Angelou. And I don't know if you know, but when she was a little girl, she was attacked. And in fact, she was raped. And the trauma of that attack was so profound that she stopped speaking. But she started writing poetry. And her teacher, Bertha Flowers, said to her, you know, Maya, if you're going to be a real poet, you have to perform your poetry. And so Maya began speaking again. This is the power of a great teacher. So whatever your role is in education, if you are working with young people in any capacity, and you can create that bond, if you can create that mutual kind of respect, if you can show them that you care, show them that you're doing your absolute best to help them, they will remember you, they will value you. It might not always feel like it, but they will love you. And there can't be, I think, any more important job, can there, in the world? So thank you very much for listening. We'll take some questions in a minute, but at the moment, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Okay, lovely friends, you've earned your lunch. So we've got 10 minutes. Questions for 10 minutes, and then we're doing lunch? Awesome, thank you.
Can't have your lunch.
You can't have your lunch.
So thank you, yes.
You have to wait for your marshmallow.
So I'm sort of coming at this from a sort of anthropological angle, but there's something running through this, which is that it feels like the idea of the individual is a bit of a pernicious idea. I know that's a bit sacrilegious in a way, but I mean, Maya Angelou is a pretty good example of this idea, like in a traditional society, that it takes a whole village to raise a child, right? And that if you look at motivation and positivity, that's actually a collective attribute. Right, and I think the research bears this out. If the school environment is falling to pieces, the individuals are not well, right? And I mean, I've been working with the DfE on a bit of the policy research around tutoring, and one of the big things that comes out from schools is we don't want more accountability, but we want a lot more best practice and support and communities of practice, right? So there's a call from schools to be communities again, to support one another. And you're sort of saying that. I understand you kind of understand this, but this idea of being an individual and raising the next generation as individuals actually puts the burden of the collective on the individual, and that's why it's so crushing, right? And it's something that has to be paid attention to, because in some schools they've gone to team teaching, and suddenly when it's a social endeavor and people are supporting each other, it gets a lot easier, because that's how we're wired up, right? And that's a feature of our society, is that we're kind of taught to be individuals, but that's not real, actually. That's just how we're kind of socialized, right? And it only happens in what's called weird psychology societies, right? In traditional societies, the side of the individual is much more secondary to the collective, right? You're not raised or socialized in that way. And that actually places a huge amount of stress on the individual, because being an individual is actually to be in exile, right? You're not supposed to be in exile from the other members of the social species. So if you're taught to be an individual, that's actually a form of violence or punishment, right? And so it's kind of that's a lot of these themes are coming through in what you're saying, but it's like we're all. I'm as Western as anybody else. I'm affected by this. I'm married to someone from another culture, right? But it is a real problem. And if you look at the problems in schools and the epidemic of stress, and you've got children self-harming, why? Because they're isolated. Why? Because we've been told that's what it means to be a person, is to be an individual. That's not a good idea.
So I think what you're saying is how, I would really emphasize the importance of being part of the collective, and I would really emphasize the importance of collaboration and working together as a team. But the teams are made up of individuals. You can't get away from the fact that we are all individually responsible or not responsible for our own actions.
That's true, but you become that through the collective, right? There's no objective reference point for the individual. The individual is made out of the collective. And if you go from, say, policy to individual and accountability, and you miss out the group as the mediator, that creates an untenable situation.
So that untenable situation was created during the pandemic. If you think about it, we had youngsters who were on their own potentially or with their siblings for months on end. And they weren't with people they might have chosen to normally be with. And then we kind of roll our eyes and kind of go, oh dear, what can we do about the fact that we've got all of the consequences of the pandemic in our schools? So I think the ideas that you're talking about are important, but I think they're part of the story. Yeah. And the story is where we've got individual children, maybe, who have chosen or needed to, or for no fault of their own, are not part of a class, not part of a system, needing individual tutoring or small group tutoring. We need to help them develop the sort of the self-efficacy and the identity that they need to do so that they can move back into society. We can't have a society of individuals. So I genuinely don't think we're opposition one with another. I think it is about, though, I agree the importance of team teaching, but even in team teaching, the team teaching that works really well is where there's a kind of dynamic between each of the teachers. And the children, it's almost like being with mum and dad or whoever across the family. They kind of bask in the sort of the little bit of rapport that goes on. If, on the other hand, you've got team teaching situation where the teachers, quite frankly, hate each other's guts, that becomes very, very obvious very quickly, and everybody kind of exacerbates it. So all of this is incredibly complex. I mean, this is why I loved being a teacher. I love being a teacher because the job is impossible. I mean, it is. Every day, especially if you've thought that you've got everything planned out and you know what you're going to be doing. I mean, that is fatal because it never works that way. But it's never boring either, and it's increasingly, constantly, irresistibly about trying to improve. And that I'm sorry if that came across that it's all about on the individual. I think it is about how do we all do our bit to improve and enable teaching to be the best it can be. Big job to do.
There are a question from the Voice of the People online.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's what I've been doing. I've been busy tapping away, keeping the masses online entertained and informed. It's been brilliant. There's some great things coming through here. So there's a couple of questions. First of all is some people who go into tuition are ex-teachers themselves, and they may feel that they are an example of people leaving the profession because of workload or feeling like they work in a toxic environment. And so one of our members here has said, having recently been bullied, in inverted commas, out of a school, how do we continue to work within a school when not all have the same ethical value set or something similar? She said, if that doesn't make sense, how can, and that certainly, I think, broadens itself out to tutors or those that might be working in schools as part of the NTP. How does anybody, I suppose, in education navigate those sort of toxic or varying working environments? What would your advice be?
So I think, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about the colleague who's been bullied. Schools are all very different. So if there's a possibility of moving school, I would suggest move school. Stress comes when you want to go this way and something else is pushing you over here. So that is where the point of stress comes, and it becomes very difficult. So if you're working in an environment where their value system is here and your value system is over there, it's never going to be somewhere that you can confidently, happily work long term. It makes it impossible. But as I've said, there are so many different schools, there are so many different situations, and our children need us. So if you're in a situation where you feel you can't be your best version of yourself, try and go somewhere else would be my suggestion, as soon as you possibly can. I don't want to add to the kind of recruitment crisis, but I do think that teaching is such an important job, it's such a relational job, that if you are feeling underloved, undervalued, under pressure, you can't give out in the way that you need to. Teaching is a lot about giving out to help others. Okay, we'll take one more question and then we'll finish.
Thank you. We talk about being a collective. Teachers, tutors, we're all educators, we're all supporting, and part of it is imparting knowledge, but we are encouraging these students to reach the best that they can. But I find, as an independent tutor, it very hard to be able to communicate with the classroom teacher of the students that I'm working with, to find out what they're seeing, to find out what they would like me to work on, because they simply do not have the time, knowing that there's 30 children in the class and they can't get around everybody. What can I be working on with this student? At the same time, we don't want to be adding to their workload in having to communicate to lots of tutors. How do we get that relationship where teachers have the time and the... Respect is the wrong word, but it can feel like that tutors can be not second-class educators, but we're seen separately, and we can't always get access to teachers to find out. How do we make that more of a collaborative endeavour without adding to the burdens?
Thank you. I mean, that's the reason that when Julia reached out, I responded so quickly, because I think it's incumbent on all of us to work together. We also encourage teaching assistants to join the Chartered College as associate members. There are many teaching assistants who work alongside a teacher all day long, but never maybe only have 5 minutes conversation with them on a one-to-one basis about what they're going to be doing tomorrow or how did today go. I think it is about culture. I think while we've got teachers who are so under pressure to do everything they need to do, they will prioritise what's in front of them for their well-being. There's more we can do. I can kind of say, from the position of being a teacher myself, that I can understand some of the frustrations that you will be experiencing. But we have to keep on trying, I think. It's really important. I mean, make myself sound like Methuselah, but when I started teaching, there were some schools I worked in where teaching assistants weren't even allowed in the staff room. Because it was like, well, teachers can have a staff room. You go and get your sandwich wherever you want. So that kind of, that's moved a long way. But we still have work to do. And I think that, the more that we can build the status of teachers and the status of the whole profession at large, the less there will be the need to kind of divide and rule. The more there will be a case of let's embrace anybody who is happy to come and help. Let's embrace, because that's the best way that you can teach. In the meantime, the young person that you're working with will be able to tell you the things that they feel are real priorities for them, that they are finding really difficult. They are the huge source that you need to be able to sort of tailor your lessons. So don't underestimate pupil voice as part of what you do.
Absolutely. I find I'm maths. A lot of students come to me and they don't know what they did. They can't name it.
No.
To be fair, I imagine there's a lot of people in this room that couldn't name the maths, exactly what they were doing. So actually, that's why talking to the teacher, we've just done this topic. Okay, I can now go. I know what topic they've...
So you only need a medium-term plan, don't you?
Yeah.
Once a term.
But actually getting that from a teacher who is dealing with a lot. So it's not wanting to add to their burden of more emails, more admin, more that. It's how do we get that relationship where I can see where they're going. Okay, I know this student struggles with directed numbers. That's going to come in to this bit. I can go and underpin it ready for what they're going to do. Or they came out of this lesson, they didn't get it. And I've got students that will turn up to me and go, I did, this is what I did. Here's a page. I didn't get it. Okay. Time to change what I was planning to do today.
Yeah,
we'll go in. But to get that communication with the teacher is...
I recognise this work to do. I do recognise this work to do, but we need to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you again, and thank you so much for participating in the conversation. And everybody at home, we're going to go and take lunch. You're going to switch your screens off and you're going to go and take lunch. And we will see you in?
Until 2 o'clock, but at 1:15, you and Dame Alison are having a lovely conversation.
Right.
With earwig on.
So bring your sandwiches and come back and we'll do some chatting together and explore some ideas. Thank you.